It's a beautiful day, isn't it? How you doing, Nikita?
I'm doing great.
We are here. This is it. This is the moment we've all been waiting for. The very final masterclass. My gosh, it's been a lot of work. We've taught people in basically every area that we know, except for one. And that one is fundraising. And we saved probably one of the most sensitive, one of the most challenging issues as a missionary for last for a few reasons. Number one is we want you to make sure you're called and make sure that you're obedient to that call before you even start thinking about money, because as I think about Jesus and his parables, Jesus and his preaching, the things he talked about most were the kingdom of God and money. And time again, he said, you can't serve two masters, God or money. And in this case, we're talking about fundraising. So how do we deal with that? How do we justify that? I think a lot of people think that money is the root of all evil, and it's not. It's the love of money. And so we have to do this as, I don't want to say a necessary evil, but we need to show that we love God by preaching the gospel. So I wanted to take you to the most common fundraising passage in the Bible, and it is Romans 10. Let's do Romans 10. You guys ready? Okay, we're going to go over to Romans 10. I believe it's 10 through 13. Give me a second as I get there. I want you to get there as well on your phones. Romans 10, or your Bibles, even better yet. And here we go. We'll start with 13. For everyone who calls upon the name of the Lord will be saved. Which obviously means if they don't call on the name of the Lord, well, they won't be saved. How then can they call on the one they have not believed in? And how can they believe in the one whom they have not heard? And how can they hear without someone preaching to them? And how can anyone preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. Today, Nikita, we're talking to some people that I believe are going to have some very beautiful feet, right?
I believe it.
Reminds me of when we were in Brazil, and I ask everybody, if you're called to go, even if it's across the street, across the sea, across the world, put your shoes in the air. All of a sudden, the whole place starts stinking. But I want to add something to this, a little insight that I just received from the Lord, I believe. It says, how can they believe in the one whom they have not heard? How can they hear without someone preaching to them? How can anyone preach unless they are sent? How can they be sent if they don't ask? If they don't let people know that they feel called? If they don't relay the need? If they don't communicate with others? So today's class is about that. And we always start our classes 3 minutes before the hour, so that when people join us on the hour, they're like, oh, I better get there early. And so you usually, if you've caught any of our previous classes, you probably see the end of this video. But I've asked Connor to not start at 4:57 with this video. I asked for us to start by conversating right now, having a little dialogue, and then asked Connor to play this video that you may not have seen the entire version, but this is essentially the short version of our ask, of our call to action for getting partners. So go ahead, Connor, run the video, and let's do the intro.
Our mission has always been to reach the lost at any cost. But what about the third world countries, the developing nations that can't afford to bring out even one of us? So we decided to become musicianaries, full-time musical missionaries. that go to the ends of the earth to preach the gospel to those who could never afford to bring us out.
God has given us this huge platform in different countries, so we can throw a stage up in the middle of nowhere and people know who we are.
Music is a universal language that really speaks to all cultures and all languages. And in that, we're able to attract people who wouldn't normally go to church or respond to other forms of ministry.
It's a great opportunity for big crowds to come to hear, and we just give them the gospel.
One thing that sets us apart from so many other bands is that we always preach the gospel. In every single concert, we give an opportunity for people to respond to the good news of Jesus Christ.
We are called to reach the lost, meaning the suicidal teenagers, the homeless, the drug addicts, those that are in broken families, pretty much everyone. Another part of our mission is reaching the last.
It's really cool having the opportunity to minister to the tribes around the world because I come from an island nation. There's nothing like that moment when we get to give the gospel to see as many people as possible to come to Christ.
God has called us to reach the least of these. Think about trash cities in Honduras. Think about the slums in Kenya, or even Papua New Guinea, and reaching the little girls that we meet with no clothing, and here we are able to provide clothing, or those who don't have food and being able to feed them. And then we bring them the gospel, the truth, the message of hope, the message of love, everything that Jesus represents.
Every one of our concerts is free, and we have set out to minister in third world and impoverished nations on every single continent. But we can't do it on our own. We need musicianary partners such as yourself. Would you be willing to join our monthly support team and help send us out to the ends of the earth to reach the lost at any cost and make disciples of all nations? There you have it. That is it. And you notice we use the word support team and partners. Yes. And it reminds me of this logo. You see, we have, by the way, one person said, when did you become a part of some sort of cult, Illuminati, because of the triangle? I'm like, oh my gosh. First of all, it represents a triune God. Second of all, it's ascend. We use that word to ascend to the peak of a mountain. And if you notice, it's two things propping up each other. And that's what I think of when I think of the word support or partner. In partnership, imagine a pole can't stand like this without another pole and maybe one in the center. The one in the center is God, and the one to the right is the supporter, and the one to the left is the goer, the missionary. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. In the last class, as Justin said, it got a little spicy. Some people are saying, stop talking about why you become a missionary and talk about how. And the reason why we spent so much time on talking about the why is because people need to understand the missiology, the heart behind it, the fact that it is biblical to go. It is biblical to raise funds. It is biblical to be sent. It is biblical to be provided for. And it is biblical to preach the gospel, whether a yard at home or abroad. And so let's start with that. We're going to get into the how. Let's talk about the heart behind being a missionary and the biblical support of actually being supported. Tell me about that.
So one biblical verse that we can find about that is actually in 3 John chapter 1, verse 8. And it actually says, we must support believers who go on trips like this so we can work together with them in spreading the truth.
We must support believers that go on trips like this so that, spreading the truth. And again, one of the things we touched on yesterday was use your gifts, use your talents to go somewhere. What we're not talking about doing is going to another nation to take a job from a local and to make yourself feel good, but to go and actually bring the comfort that God has given you to comfort others with the comforter inside, and ultimately winning them for Christ so that they then have the comforter inside and can comfort others. So this is not a poverty vacation. We also believe that though you can be one of those people that is self-funded, I believe that everyone should be raising support from others. Why is that crucial? That we don't just use our own money if we have it to go. Why should we incorporate others, Nikita?
Well, I think first of all, why is everywhere in the Bible, we see that when missions or ministry happened, first of all, Jesus sent his disciples in two. He had 12 people. So it also shows you never do anything on your own in ministry. You need each other. We can't all be
He
the
sent
ones.
them out in twos, yes.
We can't be all maybe the ones that go consistently, but we need each other where there's people that send. There's people that have the gift of hospitality and they say, stay in my house while you're traveling. Like we get to see that so vividly in the Gospels and in Acts, how they were traveling from city to city. So we have the perfect model all in the Word of God.
Yeah, Jesus, one time I forget the passage, but his disciples said, stay here. He's like, no, I have to go to other towns because they have to hear the good news as well. And it reminds me, when you're talking about this support system, some people are like, yeah, but that's not biblical. Or they turn around and say, it's the biblical model is Paul, which is tent making. And I would beg to differ. I would definitely say that Jesus gave us this example. Obviously, you can be a tent maker. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but specifically, this is what Jesus did. You ready? Luke 8, verse 1. After this, Jesus traveled about from one town and village to another. One of the reasons why we continue to go to different places is Christ's example. Though I love and respect people who stay in one place and pour into those people consistently, that is not our call as itinerant evangelists and missionaries. By the way, there are people that are called to go short term. There are people that are called to go long term, and people that are lifers that will die in that country. Okay, so after this, Jesus traveled from one town and village to another, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom of God. A true missionary is preaching the gospel, not just water filtration, not just building a well, not just teaching people crafts or arts. It is preaching the gospel, the good news. And it says the 12 were with him. We have a team of about 12. And also some women who have been cured of evil spirits and diseases, Mary of Magdalene, from whom 7 demons had come out, Joanna, the wife of Chuza, the manager of Herod's household, Susanna, and many others. These women were helping to support them out of their own means. Isn't that powerful? Even Jesus had people who had been so blessed, so touched by him touching them and healing them, they started following. And they pulled together their resources and they basically funded him so that he didn't have to go and ask necessarily. We don't see him asking. God provided. In our case, in this day and age, in this society, it is more common than not that we have to do more what Paul said, which is more asking. And Paul did a few requests to different churches where they're supporting his trips. And so are there any other passages that stick out to you, Nikita?
Yeah, I just actually put it in the chat of 1 Corinthians 3:9, where it says we are partners working together for God. I use that actually a lot when I connect with supporters or give updates.
Yes.
So yes.
So essentially, I want to give you a brief history of what I have done in raising funds. And it all started with my first mission trip. I said, I'm called to go to Jamaica. I went to my church. I would encourage you to partner with your local church and to go and say, hey, I feel called to go where they're going or somewhere else or whatever, and get them to believe in it enough to where they say, we are willing to receive funds on your behalf and then use those to reimburse you for expenses. That's how I would start. That's what I did. And so I went and said, I'm called to go to Jamaica. And as I'm called to go to Jamaica, will the church help support me? They said, we'll allow you to raise funds and have people send it to the church. I sent out a physical support letter to maybe 100 people, and I raised the funds I needed for that month-long mission trip. I continued to do that for years. And then as we were doing Christafari and now touring and now on a different different level, we're doing a lot of industry standard stuff. I was pulled aside by the guy who worked with the church and has now started his own missions organization. And his name is Gwyn Lewis from the Sowers International. And he and my parents both said, hey, Mark, we really feel that you need to raise support. I'm like, well, why? We're doing records, we're doing merchandise, we're doing tours. And he said, but is that providing? I said, no. He said, we believe you're doing full-time missions ministry work and you're not being provided for. We believe that there are people out there that want to partner with you. So I sent out support letters, and then eventually Gwyn Lewis from Sowers International said to me, hey, Mark, I believe that God is calling you to go deeper and to start raising funds. And so we did so. And as we started raising funds, we started seeing God provide. And all of a sudden, we could put food in our fridge. All of a sudden, rent was a little easier. All of a sudden, money wasn't the focal point with concerts. And we could start going to places that we're called to go to, but couldn't provide. You see, as a missionary, you go for free. As a typical artist, you charge an honorarium. If they don't give you that, you don't go. And in some cases, if they don't give you that, the rest of it on the day of the show, you don't even play. I wasn't comfortable with any of that because I don't see Jesus saying and doing that. Hey, you want me, it's going to be this amount. You want the disciples, it's going to cost triple. You want the Beatitudes, you're going to have to double that again. And Judas will handle the contracts and the finances. I can't see that. Jesus came and ministered for free. And so we're supposed to. So how can we do that? We need people who believe in what we're doing to partner with us. And so how do we do it now? Well, to be frank, when I felt God calling us to become full-time missionaries, not just going and coming, occasionally doing a mission trip here and there, but the rest were concert tours. I was like, are you serious, God? We're going from a place in New Caledonia to a small little island called Lifu, where the last people eaten there by cannibals were missionaries. And I felt God clearly saying to me, I need you to disband Christafari and ask everybody to come on as a full-time missionary. And I knew at that very moment I was going to lose a lot of band members. Lost all but 3 eventually through that. It was not an easy task. And how did we decide to raise funds? The only way I knew, send out support letters. It doesn't really work that way anymore. Collect an offering at a church. That will help you for that moment, but those people will give one time. And so we started asking other missionaries how they do it. And they said, Mark, I'm seeing these videos, I'm seeing these pictures, just like what you just saw. And I wish I had those photos. I wish that I had those experiences in Haiti, in Kenya, in here, in there. You're doing everything right, but you're doing one thing wrong. Fundraising. I'm like, what are you talking about? They said, you're asking people one time to support you, and you're doing 12 trips a year. You have to ask so many people to support you one time in order to do that. You have to spend almost all your time asking. You need to be asking people one time to donate to you 12 times a year. You need to be asking people to become monthly partners. Maybe quarterly, maybe annually, but really monthly. Think of it like a Netflix subscription, a Spotify subscription. You need to be asking people to partner with you on a regular basis if you're regularly doing trips. Of course, you have to have the fruit of that, right? You have to have the fruit. They're not going to water a plant that's dead, right? So you have to be, and they're like, you're bearing the fruit, Mark, but you just need that help. And so I kept meeting with missionaries, and they all came to the same thing. They all pointed me to one book, and that one book revolutionized our life. That one book was the Bible, and that one secondary book pointed to the Bible, and it's called The God Ask. And The God Ask by Steve Shadrach. It's going to be typed right now. Somebody's going to type it in the chat. The God Ask by Steve Shadrach changed the way we saw missions and asking and raising support, because there's certain things that just don't work. You ask a group of 25 people to help you, everybody's looking at the person next to him saying, yeah, so-and-so is going to do it, I'm sure. But nobody has to answer for that question. You ask 3 people in a room, they're still going to do the same thing. You ask one person across the table from them at dinner, over coffee, in their living room, in your living room. You share with them what you've done, what you feel called to do. You sell them on that vision, that mission that they can be a part of. And you say, will you partner with me? And then you shut up, and that's when you get your supporters. And Nikita's gonna take it over from here and show us exactly how she does it, because she's the ninja, the Jedi master at fundraising. She's actually the band member that's in charge of all the thank yous for our supporters, of if a card gets declined or goes out or this or that, if somebody stops supporting, how can we pray for them and what they're going through, all these different things. So Nikita, I am so proud to have you as a member of our team. And Nix, as I call you, you didn't start being a missionary through Christafari.
Right.
Tell us about that.
So I'm going to back up before I share about how to raise support. But yeah, I met Christafari while I was a dancing missionary at a church called Crossover that uses all the elements of hip hop in their ministry. So I was already exposed to using music and all the arts, but Christafari, I came as a guest, and I was able to host them and make sure they had everything they needed. And then they asked me, what do you do? Where are you from? And the rest is history. Holland,
a family from Suriname. One of the things that I loved about Nikita, and I actually, if you remember how I said I learned from other missionaries? I sent band members to go and have lunch with you and to pick your brain and learn how you were fully funded, because you got fully funded coming from a very secular nation that doesn't really send out missionaries anymore, coming to not an impoverished third world nation, someplace where people are like throwing money at it, but to Tampa, to work at a hip hop church as a dance missionary. If there isn't, I can't think of a harder, I'm sorry, no offense, but I can't think of a harder thing to ask support for than that. But you managed to do it, and I applaud you for it. So when I saw that, I'm like, please teach our band members how to raise. And then the band member who sat with you when it came time for us to find a dancer in our band and a singer, of course, he said, I recommend her. And you ended up becoming that. Speaking of that, if you'd like to join our team, we're currently looking for a dancer/singer that can be alongside Nikita. If you sing but can dance, yes. If you dance and want to learn how to sing, yes. And another thing is videographer. slash director editor, somebody that is good with video, and the other is a sound guy, and possibly a sax or trumpet or trombone player. So if that meets if you meet any of those criteria, how can they sign up, Nikita?
You can sign up at Christafari.com/apply, and then you click on the positions that are available when you do your application.
Yes.
And you can hear back from me within a day that I received it, and we'll go from there.
Christafari.com/apply. Somebody put that in the chat. That would be great. Okay, so you were fully funded there, and then you moved over to us, and you had to move some of those supporters over, and you had to get more support in order to do so, in order to live out here. The cost of living in California is more expensive. And so how did you do it? Let's see it. How do I raise support? I'm looking at the slide.
Yep. So you guys, I just want to say, first of all, there's so much information. So I'm going to focus on the meat so you have something to start today. And then everything that I'm sharing, I will give you a virtual handout at the end of this class that you can click on. So you actually will have this PowerPoint at the end before we end. So once again, the book that we are using is called The God Ask. Awesome. I try to read it once a year, and it's basically a fresh approach using biblical scriptures, examples from other people, explaining how they have come to fully fund it as they had to raise funds as missionaries. So one thing, if you're taking notes, the book is one thing, but I really want to focus on educate yourself, meaning before you get into the mission field, I had the privilege before I joined Christafari full-time to at least tell people for almost pretty much a year of, hey, I have this new opportunity. Let me tell you about the mission. Let me tell you about the vision. This is what I'll be doing when I join. And I would love for you to become a partner and send me. And so you want to make sure that as you prepare, one of the things that the book is talking about is to pray about who to ask. I'm going to go to the next slide real quick. There is something that I love in the actual book, and it's a quote, and it says literally, hopefully you guys can see this, the will to win is nothing if you're not willing to prepare. And I'm just going to repeat that again. The will to win is nothing if you're not willing to prepare. We see that even in the Bible. If you don't build your foundation steady, it's going to collapse. So you want to do the same thing with your fundraising. So one of the things that preparation is for you, if you're called as a missionary, learning about it, but then also doing the necessary work to call people, to email people, to create maybe a platform where people can be updated. What we use in Christafari is emails through MailChimp. It's a simple app you can put on your phone as well. Another thing that we've done in the past is sending quarterly support letters. So whatever it is that you're asking people to invest in you, you want to make sure that you show the return on the investment. In our case, I hear someone.
Yeah. And we also do monthly thank you letters, which for me are about 400 words, 500 words, and it gives an update of what we've done in the last month and a kind of a vision casting of where we're going. So communication is crucial. Preparation, communication. Those are two words somebody put that in the chat, preparation and communication. And part of that preparation is also studying two things, the culture you're called to go to. So I used this global evangelism book that I would pour through it, and I would study the stats of the places. I would Wikipedia, I would learn, everything I could about, for me it was Jamaica for the first 14 trips. So learning about that and then learning about cross-cultural missions is crucial as well. So read books. I remember one book I read on missions when I was going to Biola, which is a Bible college, and my emphasis was missions. And I was mad at this book, Nikita. I was mad at this book because it spent one of the first chapters entirely on time, on how time is different in different countries and this and that. We need to learn to be flexible. We need to learn to adjust. And I'm like, this is the dumbest waste of my time. Wow, that's a lesson I'm still learning as we go to these different places. First question I have when I arrive: what is Trinidadian time? 2 hours late. I know that because I'm married to a Trini. But what is Dutch time? 15 minutes early. What is American time? On time or 15 minutes late, etc. So understanding, learning about missions. Never stop learning. And one of my favorite things to do was I studied this book called From Jerusalem to Irian Jaya, and it was the history of missions. And in school, I would have to actually read a chapter about a missionary, let's say Hudson Taylor, William Carey, founders of missions in different areas. And I would have to write the positives and negatives, the things that I could learn and apply from them, and the hazards that I could avoid that I learned from their life. That was a big thing as well for me to shape my missiology, my understanding, my study of missions. And you need to have that. You can't go to a place and be irrelevant. Jesus did not come to Israel as a Chinaman speaking in a whole different language. He contextualized the gospel, and you need to be able to contextualize the gospel and contextualize the asking. What does that mean? It means being able to ask and relay to people in a way where it fits in the context. You speak their language, you're eye to eye, you're smiling, you're this, you're that. Your contextualization is crucial. Sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
Yes, and so another thing that we see biblically in First Chronicles 29, you can see on the screen 14, it says, "For all things come from you, and from your hand we have given you." And that is such a powerful reminder that if God is calling you to a work that requires fundraising, God will never shame you. Believe that if you do your part, that He will be able to do immeasurably more than you could imagine. I have been able to see that in my life of 7 years fundraising almost, but even having for me a mentor in Mark doing it for 30 years. So the next thing is what Mark said at the beginning, where he talked about the triangle, and that's really what the God ask is all about. So you see in the middle on the picture, the God
I'm going to
ask.
interrupt one more time. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry, but the last slide you said everything comes from God. Every good and perfect gift comes from Him. If God is calling you to do this, where God guides, He provides. If He gives you the vision, even if it's ridiculously huge, like 5 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago when I said, I think we're going to start a school called Ascend. Everybody in the band's like, you're going to what? No, it's not. I'm going to what? It's we're going to what? It was ridiculous vision. It was insane vision. And the translators that are trying to keep up with what I'm saying right now are agreeing. It's insane. The tech guy who's currently making sure that Mark's staying on time knows that it is insane. But when God provides the vision, He will provide the provision. And I can tell you this. I haven't done it perfect, but I've never been late on rent. I've never missed in 30 years one bill intentionally, unless I happen to be out of town and not be able to send it in. Never once have I been under. And one of my favorite Bible verses is seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. So God will provide. And this is how He'll do it. And she's going to get into this triangle, which is so crucial. Go for it.
All right, so here we go. So if you see on the top is God, right? Then you are the ministry worker on the left. And then on the right, that's anyone potentially supporting you. So both people, if you look at it, have to actually ask God, right? You are asking God for provision for the calling that He's given you, but that potential supporter at the same time is also saying, God, where do you want me to invest, right? A part of the things that we see in the Bible is stewardship with our money. So they are asking God too, where do you want me to sow, right? And then there's this connection horizontally between you, the missionary, and that potential supporter, where you invite and say, hey, this is what God is calling me to do. This is what I'm going to do. This is the mission. Will you prayerfully consider joining, right? So number one point that I want to give you with that is you are the mediator of the vision, but God is ultimately also part of it all the time. You want to make sure you pray and seek Jesus first. Like Mark just said, seek first the kingdom of God. Another thing that the book is emphasizing is when you are called to your mission, you'll see that there's this radical commitment to faithfulness. And when you do that, it will produce results. Like think about in anything in life. If you put in the time, the effort, and the work, you will see fruit from it. So you have to also realize, am I responsible and committed and disciplined enough to the mission? Because think about it. If I'm a seller and I'm not even passionate about what I'm selling, why would somebody want to buy in? The same with your mission. You want to be the one that's sold out for it as well. I always tell people, be the first to support in what you're going to do. And so one example I'm going to pull up in front of me, when I first started, I actually made a quick little handout. And it basically is something that I use every time when I meet with a person to give them tangibly, right? So you make a presentation, you tell people about what you do, but you also want to leave something behind so that they have a visual reminder of this invitation. And then as Mark earlier said, is ask for monthly support, be bold. The book emphasizes don't ask too little. Why not ask big? Sometimes we make the mistake to think, oh, I don't think this person could support. And we have all these assumptions that someone can't support. We might sometimes even think that, oh, that college student might not be able to give because they're in college. Matter of fact, sometimes that college student will give more than maybe that married couple that's right now saving for college funds for all their 4 kids. So you never know who could support, but the bottom line of the book is anyone is a potential supporter, anyone from your past, your family, etc.
Definitely. And they're not just, don't see somebody as dollar signs, see them as a potential prayer partner, because that in and of itself is crucial. And not just as a potential prayer partner, but if they aren't willing to support because they're in this tough spot, maybe they will be able to later. And perhaps they know some people that would be willing to. I asked one of my good friends, I said, will you partner with me? And he said, I can't. I'm sorry. I'd love to. Thankfully, a year and a half later or 2 years later, he's now supporting. I didn't have to ask again. He just at some time started supporting. But he did say something when he said, I can't. He said, you should try asking this friend. And I'm like, okay, that guy is about as smart with his money, thrifty with his money as anybody I've ever met. In fact, I know that guy is moving to another state just because it doesn't have state tax. He doesn't want to have to pay an extra 10 cents when he buys a bottle of water. That thrifty with his money, kind of like my father is. And I'm like, I just can't imagine this person giving. But I went and faithfully asked. I knew that this guy was moving to another state. I knew that he was really smart with his money, wise with his money. And he turned around and became one of our biggest monthly partners to the penny of the 10th that he was called to give. And he still does religiously, literally religiously. And he's like, I'm moving to another place. I don't have a home church. I believe in your ministry. And I want to partner with you monthly at this amount. And I was like, what? I think it was like $280 or something like that. I was like, wow, this guy is so wise and thrifty with his money. Yet at the same time, because I knew that about him, I was never going to ask. And in that faithfulness of just asking, and take it back one slide, I just want to remind you guys this. You are on one side. Your job is to ask 2 things. Ask God, provide, trust that he will, possibly through this friend, through this potential supporter, and then to invite them to invest in their heavenly account, invest in kingdom work. It is not your job to get a yes or a no. It's God's job. And if you get a no, it's coming from God through them, through their obedience or their disobedience. You're asking God, he will provide. You're asking somebody else, you're being faithful. I like to say this, work as if it all depends on God. Work as if it all depends on you. Trust as if it all depends on God, because it does. If you don't do the work, if you don't make those calls, I don't know if you're going to see that same amount of funding. So here's an example. 4 years ago, we took a month off as the band, and the band was underfunded, and some band members were using their credit cards, which I would not recommend. And so I said, this is my challenge to you guys, to make an ask with a friend. Take them out to lunch, take them out to dinner, insist on paying, have some small talk with this person, find out what they've been going through, what their life is like. And then they ask you what's going on with you. Nikita's going to get into that in a minute. And then at the end, give that pitch, make it about 15 minutes long, and then ask that question and smile and be quiet. And then if they say yes, receive it. My wife and I did this for 30 days. We did 30 asks, and overall, the average was $100 per ask. We raised $3,000 that covered our mortgage, that covered our health insurance, that covered our utilities, gas, electric. So our at-home, not all of our at-home, not our food, not our car insurance, not our life insurance, but the majority of our stuff was provided for in 1 month of faithfully asking. It is possible to do this. And we did so without being scared of what they were going to say, but trusting that God was going to be faithful if we were faithful to trust in him and to do the work. Let's continue.
Mm-hmm. All right. So the next thing I want to show you guys is one of the things that the book is talking about. So like I said earlier, prayer, there's an entire chapter on just that part of preparation and just seeing God move in people's hearts and people that you think might never give, and realizing that once you share with them, suddenly they become more open. But then even seeing people that you never thought would maybe give to you are the ones that give the most. So I've seen miracles like that happen in my own life. Next, reasons we do not ask. So crucial. I always tell people, when you don't ask, it will always be a no. So until you do an ask, it's no. But just ask.
I love that.
Right? Just ask. That student, that neighbor, that person that you went to school with in high school or elementary, the people in your Bible study group or church, but also asking other people, do you know someone else? I'm going to give you one example. This morning, I went to Mark's house. I had to pick up some envelopes because I was sending some of my information to people that I met a month ago. I was spending some time in Missouri, and the people that I met are supporters of one of our missionaries that are already here in our team. But I also felt God nudging me in my heart, just ask. You never know, you know? And I literally called them this morning and I said, would it be okay if I sent some additional information about my missions work with Christafari? I can send it in the mail today. Yes, absolutely. Send it, you know? But even on top of that, that person said, I just want you to know, before you even asked me, we already had made a decision in our heart a while ago that we want to support you too. So it was me asking.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Right? It was me taking that bold step. Hey, I'll just ask, you know, because sometimes we're a little bit tendency and say, well, do you want to just pray for me? Yes, we need that. But don't let your own insecurities or doubt of who's going to support you stop what God wants to do with them. Right? So always ask. The third thing.
And real quick, don't rob them of the opportunity to give. Sometimes if you don't ask, you're basically almost saying, hey, I don't want you to be a part of this team. And some people are like, please, can I help? So don't keep that opportunity from them. And I remember, Nikita, you're fantastic at this. When we were in Belize, not a rich country, a person was driving us around and volunteering, and you asked this person. Nobody in the band thought of asking somebody in what some would consider a developing or even third world nation to partner with us, they would think, oh, that only comes from America. You asked this person from Belize, and sure enough, they said yes. And everybody else in the band was like, man, I should have asked. You got to have faithfulness. You got to just trust.
Yeah. Another thing that I want to focus on is have a budget and goal to be fully funded. Meaning by that is you come up with a timeline and basically decide how long do you want to take to build your support. So the book talks about if you need to have $2,000 as a single person and you're saying, I'm going to try to do it in 40 days. Well, commit to those 40 days and make an outline who you're going to call on those dates to set up appointments, like actually do the work. And if you need someone to keep you accountable, your best friend or your mentor in fundraising, do that, because this is not just you alone. There's people that want to help you and equip you. I love how the book even says, take more risks in life. Like, this book is so good. It actually, it's not just people, their stories of fundraising, but it's even like using biblical references of other people in the Bible that had a mission and they were supported by other people. And then fifth, one thing that I can't stress enough, and the book talks about it, face-to-face meetings.
Awesome. And I love what you said about having accountability in all of this, Nikita, because if you don't tell somebody, like, I remember when I had this vision and I felt like God was saying, I want you to reach 1 million souls, to win 1 million souls. I didn't tell anybody. And until I started telling somebody, we didn't start seeing those numbers. When I told somebody, they started praying for that. They agreed with that vision, with that mission. And all of a sudden, boom, 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 we're up to 770,000 now. Praise the Lord. So yeah, tell somebody and then get that accountability. That's great. All right, let's see what we got.
All right. So the next thing, before we go into questions, face-to-face meetings. Oh my goodness. I just want you to know right now, please do face-to-face meetings, not as an option, but as your primary way of asking. Why? When something is important, and this is what the book is talking about, you want to do it face-to-face. If somebody is going to propose one day, a couple, right, a guy, do you think that guy is going to send a text and say, I really like you and love you and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me? Anybody can send a text, but we all value things that happen in the moment, face to face, that we can cherish. So if your mission and the call that you're passionate about is so important, why not share it face to face, right? And so we focus on face to face meetings. Now, if you're like me, in another country and you have family members on the other side, you can still do face-to-face with nowadays technology like this, right? Sharing that presentation that I'm doing right now so that people can see and hear what it is that you're doing. And then another thing in communication skills is thanking before you bank. I've learned that actually from Mark as well. You want to talk about that, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. The whole concept is, as you receive this money, you have to acknowledge it. You have to thank them for it. You have to let them know what it's being put towards. And it helps. It's kind of it's a respect thing. And it's also, in America, we do attaboy, like kind of a thing. It means like, it's a way to tell somebody they're doing the right thing. And if you just take and take and take and never update them, never thank them, never let them know that you appreciate. Like when you donate today to Christafari.com/donate, whether it's to Nikita or to me or to the Most Needed Fund or any other band member like Connor, who's slaving through all of this work and he's not even in the band. When you do that, you'll get an instant reply. We thank you so much for partnering with us, how important this is, and we'll even give you Avion's album Fly for free. And it's not the give to get mindset. That's not it. No. It's also not a reciprocating thing like, okay, I'll partner with you. Now, will you mow my lawn every week? It's not that either. It's not a doing this for that. It's a doing this to do that, to reach that. And so one question that we have here that I absolutely love, and it goes like this. How do you finance a project that is just starting? If there is still no product to show, like videos, like what we have of previous visions, missions, how do you do it? And I would say sell the vision. I would say, I mean, we just read earlier Isaiah where he says, "Here I am, send me." He had no idea where he was going. He had no idea, but he knew that God was calling him. He knew that God had touched his lips. He knew that God had said, "Who will go? Whom shall we send?" And so part of it is just saying, hey, I feel called. This is my testimony. This is my story. This is my song. I feel called to do this, and my end goal is this. Now, if your end goal is to make friends in another nation, or to travel to Aruba, to do missions on the beach while putting suntan lotion on, you're going to realize really quick that you're not going to get funded. So this is one of the reasons why we think it's crucial that you get that, not just prayer support, but financial support, because people won't put their money behind something that they don't believe is valid. And so if you're not getting that support, you may have to ask yourself, and maybe ask some pastoral counsel, do you think that this is a valid thing and that I'm asking wrong? Or do you think that I'm asking right, but what I'm called to do isn't necessarily valid? So the fruit will reveal the root, but sometimes all you have is a seed. But if you only have a seed, you show the package of seeds. You say, I got it from this. This is an image of what the plant will look like. And the instructions on the back say to water, to fertilize it, to give it half the sun in the day, to do this, to do that. And I believe that this will become this. Will you help me water it? That's what I'm trying to say. And that's something that you're basically doing. You're asking people to come alongside you to do the ascend mountain. Will you lean against me in this? Will you be my support system? Right?
Yep. Yeah. And then two more things before we go into questions. Once again, that verse is just really good biblical reference, but also encouragement to know that God has a word for missionaries. He has a word for all of us in ministry that are in, the side of raising funds. And then lastly, one verse that we have adopted for this year in our missionary work as Christafari, that's 1 Corinthians 15:58, and it says, "Therefore, my beloved brothers, be steadfast, immovable." My screen is blocking the rest of the verse. "Immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that in the Lord your labor is not in vain." And that's also for your fundraising work. If that's what you're doing, if God is putting you in that season of preparation, it might feel hard in the beginning, but don't give up. Like anything that we do in life, I'm going to send you guys in this chat some information on how to actually make an ask with actual mock-ups that talk about how do you even talk on the phone, what do you say when somebody says no, and give you a couple of scenarios of how you can practice this. I'm also going to send you some information about keeping an actual report of how you're doing when it comes to accountability, and as well as how do you even make an appointment, how do you follow up. So that will be all in there for you to utilize and digest. And then guess we need to go into questions, right?
I have a few questions. First question is, what do you say when somebody says no?
All right. For me, when I hear no, I take the no, I smile because I'm already prepared for any answer. But what I actually always do is, if it's a no now, would you consider at least for me to send you some information about the mission then? And would you be willing to pray? And if it's a no now, do you know anyone else that might be willing to hear about this work? So a reference. So those are two options. Can you come on my emailing list? Will you pray for me? Do you have a reference?
Yeah. So I see a no as either a is it a not now, or is it a not ever? Prayerfully, chances are it's not a not ever. So one of the things that the book tells you to do is to come up with a list of people. Let's say you're going to have a wedding, right? And let's say you're marrying your best friend that happens to be a woman or a guy, depending on whatever the opposite sex is. So everybody in your entire circle of you and this person that you would want to come. Now, most weddings, they're like, oh, we want to have a small wedding, 50 people. And then they're like, we have 500 now. We're going to cut it down. We can't even cut it down to 300. I don't know how we're going to do this. So what you do is you think big. You get every name you've ever gotten. Everyone you ask. Everyone you ask, no matter what. But then you start by sorting them out. Level A, level B, level C. C is, I really don't think they're going to say yes. B is, could be a warm lead, as we would say. And A would be like, I really believe that they're the ones. And at the very top of the A leads, those are the people that we are going to call your initial transition support team, your rocket launching team. What does the book call it? I forgot. But essentially, you want to get let's say 4 or 5 people as your initial transition team. And this go team, think of them like when a car is going around NASCAR and it's just racing around, and then it stops, and then they fill it up with gas, they pump the tires up, they switch out the tires, the driver takes a drink of water, wipes the sweat, jumps back in, and goes. These are the ones that help you raise the support by promising you an initial commitment. Hey, will you partner with me in this next 6 months, let's say, of raising? Will you help me cover my costs so that I can devote all of my time in this 6 months to get fully funded? And who should I ask next? And when you get a yes from them, then you have we call it the buffer. You have a little wiggle room now. You're not starving. You're not raising to buy that burger so that you can eat it that day anymore. And now you go, those are the top ones on the A, and then you just start going down your list. Which ones have the capacity to give? Which ones have the capacity to give the greatest? I will tell you this. Christafari has to raise an astronomical amount of money to have 12 to 15 people travel to some 30 nations in a year. Imagine that, going to Nepal with that many people, going through Asia, going through Africa. And we don't go to Kenya. We go to Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Tanzania. We go to the surrounding nations when we go. Malawi, it adds up. Every one of those are flights, baggage fees, lodging, food. It is astronomical. The amount we have to raise is redonkulous, as we would say in America. You know, about a half to maybe a third of that money we have to raise comes from 2 people. So if you find the people at the top, they're going to get you further along than if you focus on the ones that you know don't have the capacity to give, but only $10 a month. Should you ask those $10 a month? Absolutely. But you may want to start with the priority, the ones that can give greater, because you're going to, as you see more being raised, it'll give you the strength to continue on and to continue asking. Another thing that I want to teach you about is this. You're going to get no's. And that no, you have to be willing to take that. I know some people that are very close to me, that are very, very close to me that have asked, am I frozen? No. Okay. Yeah, that are very. I know some people that are very close to me that have asked and got a no, and because of that, it deflated them. They lost their steam. They lost their momentum, and they stopped asking. So you have to have some thick skin. You have to be able to let the water just roll off your back like a duck. When somebody says no, they're not saying no to you. They're saying no to God having them partner with you in this. And it could be that they're donating to a kid, for World Vision. It could be that they're partnering with other missionaries. It could be that they don't have the money. It could be they're not givers. One of the things we're encouraging people to do is to understand the concept of giving, that all believers are called to give. And some would say that's only for the church. But what we find in the New Testament is time and time again, when these churches were giving, they were giving to support missionaries or to support other churches. So I really believe it's biblical to be asking people to partner with us. Anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I totally agree with that. One thing I want to add is, even as a missions worker, don't forget that you are still called to tithe. I think sometimes people think, well, I'm the worker, so I don't need to participate in stewarding or being generous. I think that's very important to not forget that if you are receiving ministry funds, yes, you use them for funding, but also trust that God is looking for you for stewardship too.
Sorry, I love that, because I struggled with that, to be frank. I felt like for some time that we were going to so many nations, we were reaching so many people, and that I was the one receiving the tithes, the love offerings, the love gifts, and that it was my response to tithe with my life. And to give all my time, all my everything, all my resources. And I was doing so. And every cent that we had come in went out solely to reach the lost. But every once in a while, I would Google, I would research, should a pastor tithe? Should a missionary tithe? And to be frank, I didn't like what I read, because time and time again, it would say yes. I was like, but I'm tithing with everything. And it came back to realizing that I'm a Levite. The musicians, the pastors, the priests, they were the Levites in the Old Testament. And all the Levites would tithe to Melchizedek. And so then I would be like, okay, well, I'm the Melchizedek, I'm the priest, I'm the pastor of this organization, so I don't need to. And so they would tithe to him. He would live off of that. But then he would then tithe unto the Lord a tenth of whatever he got. And it seemed to me kind of weird, because he would get fruit, and a tenth of it he would just not use but dedicate it to the Lord, or meat, or this or that. And an interesting thing about the Levites is that they were the only tribe that wasn't given a piece of land. Their inheritance came from the people tithing. Their security came from the people tithing. A full-time missionary, that is your inheritance. Your provision is coming from others. It's not coming from you. And so when I finally wised up and started giving, that's when the Lord just blew my mind away with his provision. That's when miraculously the Lord provided for us a house that we thought we would never be able to afford. That was when God just blessed us with a daughter. And that was when I was able to then take this and use this to bless other missionaries that are in a similar position as my wife and I are in. And so we religiously give more than a tenth, and partnering with other churches, partnering with other missionaries, partnering with others. But as we've done so, we've seen an even greater increase There's a guy named Dave Ramsey, and he talks about the Financial Peace University. It's a great thing. I'd recommend that every Christian goes through it. It'll also help you with budgeting. And once you figure out what your budget is, you'll then know how much you need to raise. But one thing that he religiously tells anybody, whether they're a believer or not, is to give at least a tenth, because you will always get more. Non-believers know it is true as well. It is so true that it's written into our own tax codes. You give a portion of what you have, and you will be provided for all the more. So I think that's something that's crucial. Anything you'd like to add to that?
Yes, as you fundraise, something that I do once a year with our missionaries is I kind of check up on them, how they're doing financially, but also if there's certain goals that they have long term. Maybe one day they think about having a family. A lot of us are single, or if they have already children on our team, like Mark, college funding. I just got into working on retirement. I'd never done that. And when I watched Dave Ramsey, his class, he said, if you start at 30, by 70, you should have, a good amount. And I'm like, well, I passed 30, so I might as well start, as well as life insurance, and just did my first will ever. So these things I'm now thinking about, but I never thought about that. So think also ahead. Don't just be thinking about the moment.
Yeah, I've encouraged the band to do that, to start keep in mind that retirement is a reality. I will not retire. I will continue to serve the Lord until the day I die. I know that. But that being said, you have to, where are you going to live? And so I think that there's something about that. So obviously our goals are not to reach high and to be astronomically in any way rich. God will provide for your needs, but not your greeds. He will provide for your needs, but not your greeds. That being said, I think health insurance is a need that some band members didn't have. I think that saving for future is a need, is something that's wise. It's found in Proverbs. And I think that if a pastor should be doing it, then why shouldn't a missionary? So here's the great question from Michelle. Can you tell us how to do a face-to-face meeting? Okay. And this reminds me of another thing that you mentioned. You wouldn't propose to somebody through text or through an email. So let's talk about the priorities. Let's say, I think number one, face-to-face should be the ultimate goal. If you absolutely can't do that, FaceTime or Zoom. Thank God for technology. If you absolutely can't do that, phone. If you absolutely can't do that, email or text. But I would not do asking somebody for money, email or text. Just sounds like a scam. Sounds like something that would be coming out of Nigeria or somewhere. Somebody saying, your friend emailing you saying that they lost their wallet in Thailand and urgently send money. You're like, yeah, right. So I would say, as to do a face-to-face meeting, I would look at my priority list of all the people I know. I would prioritize them according to who I think has the greatest. Here's something crucial. For us, do they believe in our ministry? Have they ever supported anything we've done before? Do they believe in evangelism? Do they believe in musical missions in one way or another? Missions, evangelism. If they have a heart for missions or evangelism, in our case, music and those things, that's going to be a hot lead for us. That's going to be somebody, then again, they have to know you, they have to like you, they have to trust you in order to ever say yes to you. Know you, like you, trust you. So once I prioritize those people, I then start making calls, and I usually say, hey, I'd love to get together with you and share with you all the incredible things that the Lord is doing in our lives. My wife and I would like to take you out to dinner. We're going to pay. Of course, they're going to want to pay. They're going to insist to pay, but I usually try and give the person, the waitress or waiter, my card beforehand and insist that they cannot pay, because I don't want them feeling like I'm asking for a handout like that. And also, when you do pay, it makes them feel a little more indebted to you. That's not why I'm doing it, but they're sparked by your generosity. That's what I'm trying to say. They're encouraged by your generosity, and they want to be generous. The few times when I've insisted on paying and they managed to pay instead, most of those times they don't end up giving. So there's something to be said about you insisting on paying. I don't know what it is, but that's crucial. And if you can't afford a meal, do coffee or Jamba Juice or something. Find a quiet environment, a place where servers aren't always coming to you and interrupting. Maybe a place where you get your food at the counter, or they bring it out to you once and that's it. You self-serve. Make sure you've gone to the bathroom. Make sure you're not eating a full rack of baby back ribs and getting barbecue sauce all over your face. Maybe go a salad that day so you don't look like a pig. And you, like I said earlier, you share with them. So here's how to ask them. I'd love to take you out to lunch at this place or this place. You tell me which works. Pick from a few options so that they don't go to Indian if they hate Indian food and are going to get diarrhea from it. So you want to pick a few options, which works best for you and which day works best for you, Tuesday or Thursday. Don't just say, let's get together in the future. It'll never happen. Pick a day, pick a few times, have them choose between those. If those times don't work, come back with a few more. And if those times don't work, have them tell you a time. And you want to make it sooner, and you want to say this: I'd love to get together with you. I'd love to share with you some of the exciting things that the Lord's doing, a new vision that he's given me, and some of my budgetary goals. So when you say budgetary goals, they know finances are going to be involved. But when you talk about the vision and the mission and the exciting things that God is doing, I'm going to catch up with you. I'm going to let you know what God's doing. But they also know coming in that they're going to partner with you, or that they're going to say yes or no to that. And here's the thing, though. When you do sit down, be nice to the waiters and the waitress. Be nice to them. Smile. Don't be fake. Be who you are. But ask them how they're doing. Find out what's going on in their life, and then at some time, like I said earlier, they'll turn it around and say, what's new with you? What's this thing you asked, you're telling me? And then have about 10 to 15 minutes of a pitch of a vision casting. You don't ask until the end. Of a vision casting. You cast that vision. Well, I feel God called me. First of all, this is how I got saved. This is my testimony. So they know that your testimony. And then how your testimony ties into where you're called to be going, and how you feel God has confirmed that with you, and what you plan on doing. When that has happened, when you've relayed all of that, then you talk about your need. And when you've relayed all of that, then you say, do you have any questions? This is very, very crucial. You have to clear the air. You have to allow them to ask any questions that they have at all before you ask the most important question. Would you be willing to partner with me and join my monthly support team? Smile. And typically you ask for an amount, and you go in with the idea of, I think this person has the capacity to give this, or something like that, of would you be willing to join me and support me at $100 a month so that I can continue to do this full time? And then you just look at them and smile. Would you be willing to partner with us monthly to be on my support team? I'm asking you right now as you're watching this. Yes or no? I'm not going to take offense if you say no. Don't even say those words. But what you don't say is, well, you don't have to if you don't want to. Or I know you're going through some tough financial times. Don't make excuses for them. Don't give them a way out. Give them a way through this. Yes, no, or later. That's basically what you got to do. And then you just smile and let God speak to them. A lot of times they'll say, I need more time. Can I think about it? Please, I would encourage you to do that. How much time do you think you need? 3 days? Okay, cool, awesome. You mind if I follow up with you on Friday? Is 12 noon a good time? We can get together again if you want to, or you can do it over the phone. Which would you prefer? I need to speak it over with my family or my parents or with my, in this case, my wife. This is why we like to bring them together, a husband and wife together, because the number one excuse will be, I have to ask my husband or I have to ask my wife. By the way, the women typically carry the purse strings. So those are some things. That question was from Michelle, and that's how you do a face-to-face, and then you do follow up with them. And you, if it takes a while, it may take a while. They may say yes, as Nikita would testify, and then it may take 2 to 3 to 5 more touches before they start partnering, which is why Nikita typically will have her phone or her laptop ready. And she will say, if you need help, if you know the answer now and it's a yes, I can show you how to do it. Or actually, I could show you how to do it right now so that you can do it from home. No rush, no pressure. But then we encourage them to go to, and I want to encourage you to go to Christafari.com/donate. And then to click on that donate button and then to select the gift fund. If you were donating to me and Avion, you would select Mark and Avion. If you're donating to Nikita, you would select Nikita. If you want to donate to the most needed fund, which it goes towards the greatest needs, real needs that this ministry has, you can do that as well. So that's how you do it. Sometimes they'll say, well, how much? You may want to give them a pyramid and say, well, you could start with this. Some people have given this, some people have given this, some people have given this. And that gives them a greater idea, because you don't want to ask for 100 from somebody that wants to give 1,000. You don't want to ask for $10 from somebody that wants to give 100. You don't want to ask for 1,000 from somebody that has the capacity of giving 10. So that is where something you really need to listen to God on that. What would you like to add to that, Nix?
One thing that I would add is honestly upkeep. So once you have those supporters, if you know birthdays or anniversaries, try to have those touch points throughout other times when it's not just about fundraising. So that
friend raising. It's friend raising. They're not just money, guys. This is a friend. And there's something else that Nikita does. Sorry to interrupt, Nix, but you're so good at this. You don't just minister to people in Rwanda, in Guatemala, or in Jamaica, or wherever we're going or have gone. You minister to the people that are helping you go to minister. You minister to everyone you know, to anyone you meet, whether there's somebody you're just meeting in Missouri or whether there's somebody you've known for years. You don't take on and off your church clothes and become a different person. You continue to pour into their lives, to pray for them. It's friend raising, not fundraising. And so Nikita's fantastic at this. And I try to do the same. If somebody has an issue, I will pray them through that. I will counsel them for hours. Each one of my day has moments like that, where I'm having to counsel somebody be there for that person. And they're not supporting me so that I could be their counselor. I'm just being their friend, and I'm being a pastor. And I don't think you should take on and off the pastor's collar, if you will, when you're at home or when you're this or when you're that, when you're on furlough, whether you're on or off, you're always in the mission field.
Yeah. And if you don't have necessarily all the funds to send out a bunch of thank you letters or a bunch of update letters, try to really go virtually. There's now no excuse to not update people. We use once a year or twice an update video of what happened in the 12 months of ministry so that people see a visual of what took place and asking them to continue to be supporters. So use what you have. If you can't financially make a bunch of costs to sending stuff, because mailing does, become expensive if you have to send it to 50 supporters all around the world. But just know that there's ways for you to communicate through your supporters with all this virtual stuff now.
Yeah, very, very crucial. You can do that. We send postcards sometimes through TouchNote, but you can do it online. You can send images through text. You can do this. There's so much. And then, of course, your social media. Oh, wow. If your social media is not in line with what you're doing, people are going to say, why am I supporting this person? So they can go on a vacation. So we filter everything in our social media, everything in our calendar, everything in our lives, every class we're teaching here through reaching the lost at any cost and making disciples of all nations. If it doesn't fit through that, we're not going to show it. And yes, there are times where we show a picture of our daughter, dressing up, or as I'm looking at her, and she's in the backyard right now, being homeschooled. And yeah, that's great stuff. That's not off mission necessarily, but certain things, just keep in mind, you are creating optics. You are creating optics. Those optics need to be in line and consistent with what you're saying you're doing and what you're raising for. So I think that's absolutely crucial there. Jeff Nayers says, could you talk about how you do your accounts? Are there multiple accounts? How are they categorized? Are you 501c3, recommend to, or have not? Okay, so for about 12 trips, mission trips, I was under my church, Rolling Hills Covenant Church. And eventually they said, you're doing so many trips, you need to give space for other people to do trips. And at that very time, another missionary in our church was being told that. He was a pastor, and he said, I'm starting a missions organization. He's got a book written about him. We're going to be interviewing him in an upcoming podcast. His name is Gwyn Lewis, and he has this profound story, so profound that the Billy Graham Association actually made a movie about him. It's incredible. So he, powerful evangelist, been around the world so many times, trained and planted so many churches, and he started this organization called the Sowers International. So we came under that. We're still under our church, sent by our church. We are sent also by a few other churches, probably 3 or 4 churches that come to mind. If you are a pastor and would like to partner with us, that would be great. But so as we're under those umbrellas, now we have these multiple accounts. Everything that we raise goes through Sowers International, goes through Christian Resource Ministries, and then there's the tax deduction. So the 501c3 is there through that. That means that whenever you're an American citizen and you donate to us up to X amount, you can count that as money that you don't have to be taxed on. It's a real blessing. It's a property thing, I believe, in America that's unique to America. So if you have to pay X amount in property taxes, the 10th goes out of that instead. So either you pay it to Uncle Sam, the government, or you pay it to a nonprofit organization. So we do have that. And then under this Christafari umbrella, which is under Sowers, which is under Christian Resource Management for accountability purposes and everything, there are the individual funds of the band members. So there's the general, the most needed fund, and that goes towards the flights and the essential costs in order to do this. And then there are the individuals, and each individual in the band has to raise for all of their at-home expenses. So Nikita, as she said before, has to raise for living at home, for everything, every meal, every bill, every this, every that, her car, her this, her that, and they have to raise for that. Christafari does not pay for that. And Christafari does not pay them to go on shows, to do concerts, to do tours. They do not get a cent from Christafari, nor do we. Avian and I have, and the band collectively, when we do outreaches, have the task of raising for our at-home costs, but Avian and I have the extra added burden of finding those donors that can help fund the trips. And those trips are so crucial, but they're so expensive. And so literally hundreds of thousands of dollars have to be raised each year in order to cover the costs of those trips. And those trips are that comes out of the most needed fund, plus whatever Avian and I can raise, and even out of what Avian and I have raised already. And so it's not the easiest thing to do what we do, but we do have accountability in it. We have to provide a complete bank statements of every single thing, receipts of everything, single thing we've spent, and in order to get reimbursements and things like that. So it's great to have that financial accountability, and it's great to have that prayer accountability, knowing that we have hundreds of supporters across the whole band, that whether they're supporting $2 a month, one guy from Brazil, or much more than that, that they're praying for us and that they're keeping us accountable in that. Montserrat says, what about silent auctions? Gofundme. Gofundme is typically not tax deductible. GoFundMe can be good for a mission trip, but I would still say go through your church if you can, because it'll get people to be giving to a church and to be comfortable with that, so that if you're not taking a trip next year, they're still supporting maybe another missionary through the church or the church itself. I would not recommend GoFundMe, though I have had a few band members try them and fail at them. Silent auctions, I would say, are great for a project, but if you're trying to do long-term stuff, so we do a silent auction once a year when there's not COVID, and with that, people make a bid, and when they make a bid, we get their information. We use that information to send them stuff. If they didn't win, we still have their information. We may text them, we may email them, we may communicate with them, and maybe they'll be willing to partner with us anyways. But again, those concerts, when I make that ask from stage or with silent auctions, they feel good and they help us once a year, if they happen to be in town next time we do it. It's not as consistent, and as the provision isn't there like it is with the face-to-face ask. Anything you'd like to add to that?
No, you said it pretty much.
Okay. So Nikita is from Suriname. Her family's from Suriname, and she's raised in Holland. You speak Dutch, right?
Yes.
And some. Is it taki or
Saranang Tongo?
Saranang Tongo. So, any other questions that you guys have before we close it out? And also, Nikita, what are we missing? Is there anything that we're missing here in all of this that you're thinking about?
Oh, let's see. We did preparation, communication, stewardship, prayer. I think we covered it.
Is this going to be the first class I've ever taught that is on time, Connor?
Because I'm in it.
I think so.
I feel like I have a need to go longer.
You know, I made that PowerPoint exactly for 45 minutes.
And that's with Mark talking. You prepared well. All right. So Nikita, how are you going to send them this information? Let's get that going right now.
I just did it. I just sent it to you guys on the chat. So I just typed it. Anybody still need it? Because once this closes, it will take a little bit longer for you to get this when you get the recording. So if you want it now, click and get those 4 PDFs.
And I want to remind you, if you are called to go, to continue to bask in prayer, to seek the Lord wholeheartedly about it. It is a very serious thing. Chuck Smith, the founder of Calvary Chapel, would go to Calvary Chapel Bible College from time to time. and he would go and sit in classes, and he would lead over classes for pastors, future potential pastors. He would do everything he could within his strength to discourage them from being pastors because he knew it was a hard job. I say Christians are like tea bags. You don't know what they're made of until you put them in hot water. I would definitely start with short-term trip, probably 3 before you consider doing long-term missions. And I would definitely, if you're in a different nation or a different city from us, consider becoming an ambassador for Christafari. And becoming an ambassador that can mean helping us come to your neck of the woods, your nation, your city. This will not cost you money, but it will cost you time. And you will be helping partner us with local ministries, local organization. We'll find a need, we'll go there, and our goal will be to fill that need with our talents, our gifts. So I would encourage you to do that as well. And in doing that, you'd be a part of hosting us. You'd be on probably a tour bus with us as I'm teaching, as I'm pouring into others. I'll be pouring into you and discipling you. Another way that you can partner with us, aside from giving at Christafari.com/donate, which I know you're going to do at the end of this, please, Lord Jesus, is Israel. If you have a surplus and or you feel God calling you to go to Israel, May 10th through the 20th of next year, we're going to be leading a Christafari-led mission/tour to Israel, where I'm going to be teaching. I'm going to be baptizing people in the Jordan. I mean, it's going to be an incredible experience. We're going to be doing a few concerts, some witnessing, some evangelism, and a lot of fellowship. That could be a great way to get to know what it's like to be on a trip with a missionary team. And like I said before, if you play sax, trumpet, trombone, a videographer, a director, an editor, a dancer, or a singer, we would love to have you try out for us by going to Christafari.com/apply. At the end of these classes, which they're coming to an end right now, you're going to get a survey. If you would fill it out, be honest with us on what we should teach next semester, when next semester should be, what you liked, what you didn't like, what you want more of, what you need less of. We want to hear what you have to say. And in doing so, we will then give you links eventually to every single class so that you can attend virtually any class or watch any class that has already happened. And so we love you. We pray that these 40 classes have encouraged you to grow. And now that you're equipped to go, thank you so very much for partnering with us.